Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So recently I just finished another book and I really want to talk about that in today's video. I feel like Wuthering Heights was a bit of a challenge to read. It was mostly the language that I didn't really understand, especially the language that one of the characters, Joseph, was speaking. And this is primarily due to the sort of thick Yorkshire dialect that he talks in, and you know, reading it I just had to kind of skip and kind of like use the tone of how Joseph was talking to interpret, you know, the message he was kind of saying. So, you know, after reading a sort of heavy book like that, I wanted something a little bit easier to read. So doing a bit of searching online, I found this book that was sort of recommended heavily, and it was called Stoner by John William. And while I think the language is definitely much easier to understand, I don't think the sort of meaning and philosophy behind the book is easier. I'd say it's probably harder. But nevertheless, I finished this book and thought there's a lot on my mind. I kind of wanted to speak about the idea of the book and the things that I gained from the book. But I did want to make a video on Wuthering Heights in the future, especially since the controversial film is actually dropping today, if I'm not wrong, or tomorrow. I kind of wanted to see what the movie was about, so I definitely want to watch it, and maybe after that I'll make a sort of video on the book. Going into this book, I kind of had an idea of how the book would be. A lot of the online sort of reviews were telling me there's not a big plot in this book, but rather John William writes it in such an amazing way that you actually just don't get bored. And while the plot doesn't really have a lot of twists, or it's quite simple, but the way that John William writes it, it's so engaging that it's really hard to put down. And after finishing this book, I couldn't agree more. It's the way that John Williams sort of writes, so dry, but the language he uses and the way he describes certain, emotions or environments is so, beautiful. But, just to give a little bit of a background for this book, the story starts off with William Stoner, who's born into a family in Missouri, and his family are like farmers, and so he's the first one in his family to go to a university in Missouri to study agriculture. During this time in agriculture, he is kind of forced to take these English literature lessons, and while he doesn't like it or doesn't see the point of it initially, he soon falls in love with English literature, going as far as changing his course from agriculture to English literature. And he kind of goes down the road of an academic. After finishing, he starts teaching at the university, and that's where sort of most of the story relies. But there is a lot of things in his personal life as well, which I enjoyed a lot too. And this is sort of the relationship he has with his marriage, his wife. His marriage is not the best, and seeing how he kind of endures all of these things being thrown at him was sort of stoic in a way, and it was described like that in the book too. But nevertheless, he's a professor at university. His marriage is a little bit shaky, so are his relationships with friends and family too. But I don't think there's any way I can describe it without spoiling the book, so I don't want to say too much about the story of the book too much. But yeah, I would definitely recommend go to read this, because it is a really good book. But nevertheless, the main message I got from this, and the main thing I want to use to apply it in my life, is Stoner's way of living, and that was inspired, or sort of the framework of that was sort of built by one of Stoner's closest friends at the time, called Dave Masters. And while his philosophy is somewhat nihilistic, it's kind of not. He believes even though the world is temporary, human achievement is still noble because it's temporary, if that kind of makes sense. It's kind of like we don't have to make the biggest change in the world, we don't have to achieve the greatest things ever, but it's sort of the goals that we have for ourselves. As long as we sort of fulfill those, then it doesn't really matter, if that sort of makes sense. Because fundamentally you're not proving it to anyone, and the only person you need to actually prove things to is yourself. The whole plot of this book is so much more underwhelming than, you know, a book like The Odyssey or something on those lines, but that's the beauty of it. It's got such a melancholic tone that it's sort of relatable in a way. And this is because meaning in life is not measured by success. It's measured by doing things that, you know, actually matter to you. Stoner commits his life to literature, and he really is passionate about literature. And I feel like everyone has to sort of commit, or try to commit, to things they actually enjoy doing and not, you know, get forced to do it. Because our life is so small that life is given meaning through the things that we do, the things that we enjoy, and not things we're forced to do. But anyways, it was a really good experience to read this book, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who liked the ideas I talked about in this video. But other than that, thank you for watching.